अगर कस्टमर को जो चाहिए और जिस टाइम पे चाहिए, जिस प्राइस पे चाहिए, अगर हम ये तीन चीजें फुलफिल करते हैं, देयर इज नो स्टॉपिंग अस. While it sounds very trivial because there's nothing beyond that, but if you are able to do that to the best of extent, that is the mantra of e-commerce. What happens when the GDP of a country rises? Obviously, people have more spending power. uh, Spending power hoti hai, to what happens then? People typically marry later, which means there are delayed marriages. Our parents would have gotten married in the age of 24 or 26. 28 पे तो बहुत लेट गिना जाता था उस समय. Now our generation, when we got married, it was 28 to 30. Now maybe and now generations change every decade or so, and not the typical generation change.
Hey Vineet, thank you so much for joining Samyak and I on Thinking Out Loud podcast. We are super stoked to have you here with us.
Hey Samarth, hey Samyak, excited to be here as well.
Thank you so much, Vineet, for taking out time. So Vineet, just at the very onset, right? We know that you've had such an illustrious career, starting from IIM Lucknow, then several other stints in between, then scaling up Licious, and now to co-founding Supertails, right? But again, these are just the highlights that we've heard, right? But we would want to hear from you the more elaborate journey, and that would give the audience some context as to from where have you come and what are you doing right now.
Super. So Samarth, I come from the city of Kanpur. I'm born and brought up over there. Then went on to do my engineering from NIT Nagpur. I'm an electrical engineer by profession. Straight away went on to do my MBA from IIM Lucknow. I did my MBA in marketing and strategy. MBA करने के बाद the logical conclusion is to go to a large company. I joined the Tata Group. I was a part of the Tata Administrative Services, which is a general management program across the then 120 companies of the group. Started by doing project management at Titan, then was doing sales in Tata Motors, then was doing product management at Tata Motors again. Then was a brand manager at Tata Housing. So that was the essence of the program. To join an organization, go and see a problem, try to fix a problem, and move on to the next one. Even with its 120 companies, now I'm talking about 2014, which is where I had spent about 5 years with TAS. Even with its 120 companies, Tata Group was not able to offer one segment, which was on a bandwagon at that point in time, which was e-commerce. Obviously, Tata Click came in a lot later. So that was when my other partner Varun, whom we have known since the college days. He was my junior at campus at 2009. So we both also know each other for almost 13 to 14 years now. He had already joined Snapdeal, and Snapdeal had become a larger organization by then. But supply chain within Snapdeal was a startup. So I joined Snapdeal, started with setting up their transportation network, went on to head warehousing for them, and built large teams in that phase. Come 2017, Snapdeal was going through an okay phase, and which is when me and Varun both were thinking of starting up back then itself. We had learned to do a lot of things, gathered a lot of skills, but there was one skill that was missing, which was how to raise funds, which is the most important one in starting up. So we were meeting a lot of VCs, founders, and trying to understand ye paise raise kaise hote hain. And which is when we met Abhay and Vivek. And I clearly remember Vivek telling us कि यार first ये pets वाला business बाद में बनाते हैं, पहले meat का धंधा बनाते हैं. And the category sounded very exciting to us. It was underserved, it was not organized, huge potential, huge TAM. And both of us this time ended up joining Licious. together. This is where we met our third partner in crime, Aman. He was one of the first 10 employees over there. He joined them pre-revenue, and what followed from 2017 to 20 is a journey well known now. Licious went on to become India's first D2C unicorn. We built it, from a relatively smaller scale to where it had been, and all three of us together not just became professional colleagues but became very, very good friends as well. And that friendship was beyond work. That friendship was solving problems together. And I think all three of us had dated long enough to get married. It was that kind of a state. And come 2020, when COVID happened, Licious was, I know if you can say that, but Licious was on the right side of the pandemic. If there was something like that, demand just went through the roof, and we were able to chase it within a matter of 3 to 4 months. And then is when we felt that is the right time. We were much more ready, to start something of our own, and yeah, that is how Supertails came about.
So Vineet, that's like a crazy story, right? Like from a very mature startup to growing a startup to actually starting up, right? But before we move into the startup segment, right? I just wanted to ask one follow-up question, right? Given I am also from IIM Code and I somewhat relate to the IIML journey that you had. So there is this one program that you specifically mentioned, which is the TAS program, right, by the Tata Group. And it has produced some of the most stellar candidates in its prestigious history, and it still holds value in today's day and age, right? So how did something which was so structured and, could be termed as the business synonymous of an IAS, right? Like TAS and IAS could be drawn parallelly through that narrative. How did your time at TAS and that structured approach to business help you in your startup career, if I may say so?
I think the very essence. So two large things that I learned over there. Obviously amongst many more, but the two that stand out. The entire design of the program itself is such that you enter into a problem wherein you might not have background about it. Startups are all about ambiguity at times. Knowing there is something at the end of the tunnel, but not knowing exactly how it will look like, but being able to approach it logically, first principle thinking, and then being able to act on it. The second thing, with task managers is that typically they end up solving problems a little beyond their age. Task is generally, task, there is a limit to enter, which is, you can't be more than 28 years old when you're joining the programs and things like that. But since you're taking up important and strategic charters at different points in times in the organizations, you will end up having people who have relatively lot more experience working with you. Now that is the essence of people management, which will be there if you're scaling up a startup as well as you're starting up yourselves as well. You will have people older than you working with you. You will have people older than you whom you will need to, or older in terms of experience, whom you will need to convince on certain things. Get work done when there is not a direct influence. All these aspects of people management, I think a program like TAS is the best served to teach. Now if you come to a startup context, you will already be understanding the applications of the things that I was speaking about. You will build that first team, that first 10 people who might come as experts of their respective domains. You might not have, startups founders need not know all the aspects of each function wise, but the ability to be able to work with them without having prior sufficient background about them is the kind of skill which the TAS program looks forward to when they're hiring as well. And then you see how it manifests itself during the program as well. So I think those have been the largest two learnings for me for TAS as a stint.
I totally agree. So, similar to TAS, Vineet, there have been a lot of programs by corporates like this, like Aditya Birla has the Global Leadership Program, which, and obviously they hire the top talent. There may be a CA rank 50 till rank 50 or MBA from top B schools, and obviously they work across different domains. And then finally they are put into one to kind of specialize in that. But it gets they get it it kind of gives them the overview of how the entire business operates. And right now that's what people want working with a startup as well, because when you're joining an early stage startup, it's generally like that you work across different domains and you learn across how the entire startup ecosystem works. So coming to, you being working on as a project manager, then into product management, then handling the supply chain on Snapdeal side, then becoming like the operations side of Licious, and now having your startup. So practically you have also worked across different domains. So how does this experience, working with a corporate which has a tremendous history, then working for startups where Kunal and Rohit obviously being exceptional leaders, and then working with Licious and now having your own startup. The journey has been really good, and obviously the learning curve also has been amazing. How does working across domains help you see everything from top when you're having your own startup?
So Samyak, it obviously helps because you try to build context in your journey, and the more context you build, the better are your probabilities of success when you're trying to do something of your own. And I have this mantra, myself. I think experiences don't teach you what to do. Experiences mostly teach you what not to do. And I think the more number of such things you are able to accumulate over your period of time, you will have probabilities of getting at least second time right, if not first time right, in when you're doing it on your own. So I think whether it was TAS or supply chain. For example, when I started my career with Snapdeal, that was my debut at supply chain. I had not done supply chain even in my 5.5 years of TAS. But what I was confident about was that my 5 years at TAS have taught me one thing: if you approach a problem with first principle thinking, you have the understanding of what the problem's solution will look like in the medium to long term, and then you've broken down the problem so minutely that you have the solution right in front of you. After that, everything, no matter which function you are, which domain you are doing, it all boils down to execution. You might be the most creative brand manager. Eventually, once you've cracked an idea of a campaign, if you've not executed it to the T, it's just an idea.
Right.
It won't see the response that was anticipated. So I think I have always worked, in whichever stint that I work, break down a problem and be really detailed oriented when it comes to execution. We, all three of us in some way or the other have a lot of impetus on execution.
Understood. Yeah, I think it's very important to execute. Unless you don't start executing what you've planned, it doesn't make sense at all, right? Like it's just a plan on paper. That's about it. So talking about again supply chain, and you've never been across through it before. How does this entire system work? Like especially for an e-commerce brand, supply chain becomes really pivotal. And I'm not sure if you like directly worked with Kunal and Rohit, but how is their perspective also when it comes to running an e-commerce brand in terms of working on the supply chain side? What are the factors which you consider the main when you're maybe having a role in the supply chain side of the business?
So I think 2012 to 14 is when e-commerce was building in India, and that is when Snapdeal also started to grow on alongside. Yeah, in fact, Flipkart came in later. Amazon was a lot later to the journey as well. Now, what was e-commerce trying to replicate, or what problem was it trying to solve? It was trying to basically eat into the pie of an offline market of consumption that already existed. Now, what was the customer, need over there? They wanted to, have a lot more products, which meant larger assortment. An online format will obviously be more suited to give a larger assortment than maybe 1,000 square feet or even a large format store. what it had to do, and which is where the role of supply chain comes in, is that when you go to a store, you rarely come back without taking the product, because it's like planned. You've decided to buy a product, 2 to 4 hours is the entire cycle, which is where after which you will have the product in your hand. Now, if there is a purchase trigger for a product that has happened in the minds of the customer, and the product comes 10 days later, 15 days later to their household, then the customer will say, I have better options. I will rather go to an offline store itself. So the challenge of supply chain at that time to displace the offline market was to make the largest assortment available in the shortest time to the customer. So in terms of the network design, wherein how the heat maps of the demands are going to be, how are your nodal points of distribution in terms of warehouses, distribution centers, last mile centers going to be, needed to be keeping this in mind. It cannot be that the customer is seeing that, yes, I'm getting an advantage of assortment, but I'm getting it, maybe at a time or a promise which, is not, fine with me. For certain categories, there were different promises. Certain categories are like here and now. So you needed to develop value added services wherein you needed to have 6 hours, 24 hours, next day deliveries. All this was the evolution of, supply chain e-commerce that happened, between 2014 to 17. Obviously, when I have worked directly with Rohit, more so because Rohit was on the supply chain side of things. Varun had worked with Kunal on the category and business side of things. And I always got this direction from Rohit, अगर customer को जो चाहिए और जिस time पे चाहिए, जिस प्राइस पे चाहिए, अगर हम ये 3 चीजें फुलफिल करते हैं, there is no stopping us. While it sounds very trivial because there's nothing beyond that, but if you are able to do that to the best of extent, that is the mantra of e-commerce. Obviously, over time, there have had to be more differentiators that need to be added, but this was the starting point of e-commerce in India. And, we saw that journey when e-commerce was growing between 2014 to 2020 and so on and so forth.
Right. Understood. Makes sense.
So, Vineet, I mean, that was a great narrative to set out the context, right? Now moving more to the meat of the matter, literal meat of the matter, we would want to understand again, moving from TAS, Tata to eCom to actually building a D2C brand in a space which was a category creation bit, to then moving to Supertails, right? Like, again, both the businesses in some sense were category creation businesses, right? So if you could give some broader level context on what those businesses are and how is it or how different is it to grow category creation businesses, right? Because for existing categories, it's not very tough, but to create a category and then scale it to $1 billion business, then again starting up and then again scaling it big, like, if you could highlight that extent?
So one more aspect I'd like to add over there, Samarth, is whether it is a category creation business or a business in an already created category.
Correct.
If you're not different in solving the need from the category, even if it exists, you're not going to succeed. So I think you are still creating a solution which is differentiated in an already existed category. So I look at both of them as similar only in some sense. But yeah, coming to Supertails and pet care, and why category creation became so exciting for us for this space was, we always believed that there are certain categories which get created in certain stages of evolution of an economy. And I'll give you some example. What happens when the GDP of a country rises? Obviously, people have more spending power. Spending power hoti hai, to what happens then? People typically marry later, which means there are delayed marriages. Our parents would have gotten married in the age of 24 to 26. 28 पे तो बहुत लेट गिना जाता था उस समय. Now our generation, when we got married, it was 28 to 30. Now, maybe and now generations change every decade or so, and not, the typical generation change. Now people are, fine with getting married after 30 as well. Now, what does this mean? You have income, you're not getting married, which means you are spending more on yourself. If you're spending more of yourself, and this is what happened exactly in between 2012 to 2015, is when D2C brands started to come in. When the entire coffee brand started to come in, the BPC brands started to come in. These are all indulgent categories wherein you're spending on yourself. What also happens is that if you have to spend on yourself, what is next if you're not getting married is that this is completely our theory, and you can say it is the sit by the balcony, sip a whiskey kind of a theory. But how it came about was that humans require this hormone called oxytocin. Oxytocin is the love, hug, companionship hormone. If you're not getting married, you still need this hormone. We are slaves to our hormones. What happens next? Typically what happened in India, and which has happened earlier in the developed countries as well, dating sites come in. This is exactly when Tinder, Bumble, all these sites started to come in. What is the next best thing to a human which fulfills oxytocin? It's pets. They are the best companions which are able to fulfill this hormone. Now, this was a theory, इस पे कोई white paper नहीं लिखा हुआ था, कुछ नहीं था, and come 2020, COVID happened. Now how did it play out? People are at home, people are lonely, even dating sites have failed because you can't meet, what would you do? And now the next expectation is, if there is a pecking order of fulfilling this hormone, it should have boomed, and it did. People adopted pets left, right, and center the moment they were at home into 2020, early stages of lockdown. Whether it was, by looking at social media, thinking my mental health will get solved, or it was a real need of solving for loneliness. It could be on either side of the need pyramid, but the reality was people were adopting more pets. Now this is a trigger for any aspiring entrepreneur. आपने एक theory सोची, the best time for it to play out magically happened, and you actually saw it play out as well. Now that is too large a trigger to not enter and jump into that space, because you had anticipated it, you were seeing it play out. That means this is going to grow. What incidentally also happens in certain category creation is that there is a point until which the category grows at its own pace. But there is this concept called the peer effect, or the ripple effect, or the network effect. Now, anything, whether it is, why did we start taking bikes? Because our friends had bikes. In fact, एक time पे तो girlfriend culture भी ऐसा ही हो गया था ना. Friends have girlfriend. At times when we are in that midlife crisis, my friend has got a kid. There is pressure. सारे लोगों का circle में, This is exactly what is the psychology of network effect. Now, India at that point in time, we researched and we understood India is at somewhere around 6 to 8% kind of a household penetration of pets. Any network effect to take place requires a more close to a 12 to 15% kind of a penetration of that, in the overall scheme of things. In pockets, India had started reaching that penetration. So urban, maybe penetration was higher. It was 12 to 15%. Certain micro markets, Bangalore as a city, this had already reached above 15%. Obviously, COVID only fueled it, but the growth was already happening in this category. Now, this is when, kind of a hockey stick growth is expected, because the conversation start to become about that aspect. So we could really see, the social gatherings were not only talking about kids. It was always about, friends meet who have kids. They're talking about where does your kid go to school, where, all those kind of conversations. Those conversations had already started becoming about pets as well. They were starting to get planted because there were more and more pet parents, socializing, talking with each other, trying to understand from each other. This was the genesis of the fact that does not matter what the size of this category is right now, it is going to grow in leaps and bounds because it has reached this stage. Incidentally, I'll give you and how we were backed by this from other markets was China was a $2 billion market in 2010, pet care. At that point in time, it had just crossed the network effect kind of a threshold. It was at about 18 to 20% kind of a penetration. 2020, it became a $30 billion market, 15x growth in a decade. Today, it stands at a 47% penetration of household in pets. So, basically what I'm trying to say is for that maybe 0 to 5% if it has taken 50 years, 5 to 15% if it has taken 20 years, the next doubling would happen in maybe 1/3 of the time, and so on and so forth. This is this is something that you need to be very cognizant of when you are going for a category creation. Is it the timing of this, that first it does the category have the potential to cross this peer effect, network effect threshold, and where is it right now? Are the signals of the past positive enough to show that yes, this is going to overcome this, and then there is going to be kind of an escape velocity?
So I think, Vineet, I think a video of Amit who said that this category is growing by 12% year on year, and there are, I think, some 32 million odd pets in the country, and that's growing year on year. So is it still at a growth stage which is very stable, and this growth from 12% will be a hyper growth going forward, like how you mentioned about China?
Yeah. So, Samyak, the pet population is growing in the range of 10 to 12%. The
Okay,
category is rather growing at a much larger rate. Obviously, that has
understood.
multiple reasons for it. I'll first give one more context about Indian pet care market is that in India, more than 90% of the pet parents are first-time pet parents. Whereas in
Correct.
the developed economy, US, more than 80% of the pet parents are second or third time pet parents.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when somebody becomes a first time pet parent, the problems, the ecosystem, the needs are very different from a developed economy. So that set aside, even if pets are getting adopted at the rate of 10 to 12%, pets have a very interesting concept of with their growing age, their consumption increases because it is based on body weight. It's a fixed percentage
Right,
of body weight, and their body
right.
weight steadily increases, up to a particular point, and then it stabilizes post that. The second thing is that in India, packaged food penetration is also, coming closer to the network effect threshold. So I'll give you an
Mm-hmm.
example. So there is this concept called calorie conversion, which means if overall pets needed 100 grams of proteins or 100 grams of nutrients, what percentage of those nutrients are fulfilled by commercial packaged food? And in
Mm-hmm.
India, that calorie conversion is only 6 to 7%. The remaining 93% is fulfilled by home cooked food, or in some households even table scraps, and that is the reality of it. Now if this was 40-50% already, then the headroom for growth is only that much, but because it is
Correct.
at 6 to 7%, and developed markets, US has a 70% calorie conversion, Europe
Mm-hmm.
has a 90% plus calorie conversion. So there are enough and more examples to show that this pet care market is going to grow not only on the backing of adoption alone, but penetration of packaged food, as well as basically the average consumption per dog or cat itself.
Correct, correct. So I just was connecting 2 points in my mind when you were talking. So, you spoke about oxytocin, where, you need that love, that hug, that emotional connect, to release that hormone. And secondly is people spending that much on taking care of the pets, maybe the vet, food, toys, whatever comes under the purview. So now obviously the per capita income of India is also growing year on year, right? That's why they'll be able to spend more on at first buying or taking care of the pet, and then investing more and more on buying other byproducts of the same. So I think the growth of India's GDP or per capita or the standard of living, that's where a developed nation like a US and a Europe is, or a China maybe, that also will contribute a great to the growth of these kind of markets, so as to say, if my understanding is correct.
100% Samyak. I'll give you a context of, in fact, 2 points I'd like to add over here. The first thing is when Indians had pets, maybe 30 years back, it was
Mhm.
largely functional animals, shelter dogs,
Correct.
taking care of farms and things like that. In the last 5 to 10 years, it became from functional animals, which was the pet owner concept, to a pet parent concept. They started becoming part of families, but still larger families were adopting pets. People, nuclear families, and they wanted one kid and then another pet, two kids. They needed another companion for them. In the recent 5 years or so, this pet parent has also evolved into a pet sibling or pet companion, which means
Oh, okay.
Gen Z is adopting pets. Gen Z, who maybe will eventually marry late, is staying alone, has enough income because is working in another startup, or is able to take care of his or her own self, and any which ways has no other financial responsibility apart from taking care of themselves. There the propensity to even spend for that sibling is even higher,
Correct.
which is in a crude way you can call it humanization. They're
Mhm.
treating an animal to becoming a part of family to now being a sibling. So obviously
Mhm.
the extent of spend over there becomes a lot more. Additionally, one more point over there is that while the GDP and all those things grows, on account of delayed marriages, fertility rate has also dropped in India. And there
Okay.
are other factors around that as well. It was above 6% in 1970, 1990. It was standing at 4% in 2020. It is at 2.1%. And it is growing. It is degrowing by 10 basis point almost every couple of years. Now again, oxytocin, if you tie all these things up, you're not having kids as well, you're marrying late as well, you have GDP is still growing, so you have money to spend on other things. Amongst those other things, by virtue of the oxytocin slavery, you will need to
Mhm.
resort to pets as well. So it all ties up very well together. These are things which have played out in the past for other countries, whether it was developing countries like Brazil, Korea, Singapore as an example. All of these have gone through this. The single child policy came in, pets adopted more in China. All those kind of things have also taken place. So these signals and these factors are kind of proven, and they are very logically intuitive as well as to, and there is a lot of
Yeah.
human psyche involved as well.
Excellent analogy. I loved it. Loved it.
So, Vineet, I would, want to ask two, three follow-up questions to just, elucidate the business better for the audience, right? And again, they are very interrelated, so you can choose to answer them in one go, right? First is in terms of servicing of pets, right? Like which categories or which pets are contributing most right now, like say if it is dog, cats, pigeons, etc., right? Which ones are the most contributing and which according to you will grow over the years? Second essentially is, given the entire industry, right, and the host of different products that are at offer, say from Supertails for that instance, right? Which offerings do you think will just take off in the future? And lastly, right, like you rightly mentioned, right, there has been a transition from pet owners to pet parents, right? And to some extent the community angle becomes very pivotal for the growth of this category at large, right? So how do you think community and various nuances of community will come into place for category growth?
Got it. So I'll answer maybe, not in the same order, but I'll try to answer all of these, in the next segment. Samarth, let's come back to the point that I said that 90% of Indians are first-time pet parents. Now imagine a Gen Z, which I said is leading the growth at this point in time. He or she is a first-time pet parent, is looking for mental health getting solved, and possibly a lot more right swipes, a lot more dates because a pet enters their life. It's like that college mein jo guitar bajata hai, uski girlfriend achhi hoti hai, that kind of a concept. Now this is the thought process after looking at Instagram when some of the Gen Z and millennials brought the pets home. Again, a little bit of an academic concept. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is the less you know, the more confident you are. Which means you start at a very high level of confidence called as the Mount Stupid, even higher for pet care. Because of the aspects that I spoke about. Now compare this to baby care. You also stand at a very high confidence. When a couple tries to conceive and post that, but there is a period of 8 to 9 months of getting to terms with it. The baby just doesn't pop up one fine day. Plus there is this concept of wisdom within the family, the chachi, the nani, the masi, the tai. There's no concept of a grandmother in a pet scenario. Now put all of this together, you're starting like this in another category, which is very adjacent, which is baby care. You've had 8 months before you hit that mountain, which means the mountain is lower. So you start at a very high mountain, and within 6 hours of the pet coming home, you fall down the valley of despair because the pet is obviously going to do what it is going to do. It will poop around, it will bite at things. That entire Instagram image of a cute and loving dog just comes shattering down in one single day. We also know that the end state, which is called the slope of enlightenment, which is you learn the ropes of the trade, is that one is full of love. In this case, there is a lot of belonging that is sitting there. So now the issue is only this valley of despair. Two things happen because of this valley of despair. Some people do not adopt pets because they know they are going to fall into this, which is why when we researched and we interrogated people who were not pet parents, 90% of them said they wanted to be, but dhyan kaun rakhega, and to the extent of very brutally saying panga na le le kahin, right? Now coming to the people who have already adopted pets and they've fallen into this valley of despair, this is where abandonment happens. This is where people feel yaar main dhyan nahi rakh paunga. Now end state is fine, this is fine. If any solution or offering solves for this valley of despair, they are going to be successful for this category, because you are not just solving for products or any offerings, you're solving for a very real need, which means you're going to make pet parenthood as enjoyable it is going to be as quickly as possible. So you just need to shorten and shallow this valley of despair by solving for their problems during that valley of despair. What are their problems during the valley of despair? Primary needs. Roti, kapda, makan of humans. Food, which is nutrition. A dog's got to eat when a dog's got to eat. Second is healthcare, because there is large scarcity of high quality veterinarians in the country. India has about 1 lakh vets, out of which 90% are dedicated to livestock, India being an agricultural nation. So less than 10,000 vets, more than 32 million pets, more than 28,000 pin codes. The maths doesn't add up, which means access to high quality healthcare is not there. The third, the things that I mentioned, the dog runs around, is biting, is humping when a guest comes home, doesn't let let the parents sleep during the night. All of those things are nothing but behavior issues. What is education for humans is behavior and training for pets. These were the three primary needs with which we said we will build Supertails, because they solve the valley of despair. Grooming doesn't need to get solved as a primary need. Walking किसी ना किसी तरह से हो जाएगी, चाहे हाउस हेल्प से हो जाएगी, by taking turns within the family हो जाएगी. वो रियल नीड सबसे पहली नीड नहीं है. Once you build an offering, those will just become additional layers to make this further shallowing the valley of despair. And that is how Supertails was built from the first day, that we will give access to all the products, which means we have the largest assortment of pet products in the country. We will make it discoverable. We will give access to high quality veterinary doctors and trainers, behaviorists. And the third aspect is, if information is a problem, because people are first time pet parents, they sometimes don't, it's not just about the access, they don't know what to do. Then being a knowledge leader, a thought leader in imparting information is also absolutely important. Now, this is where Samarth, the aspect of community comes in. You build the community not to sell, not to engage first. In this category, you build the community to educate. The first time pet parents needs to be knowing of really petty issues also in the right way. We've had, we've done more than now 40,000 consultations. We have had so many. I'd not, belittle the queries by calling them silly, but yes, they have been something very, very basic. These are educated pet parents, but they are not educated in pet parenthood, and those needs to be solved as well. So, this is where the community layer comes in for solving. So if you're selling a product in nutrition or food, with the community and through the vets being able to tell why this product should be bought, why this nutrition is important, why this one and not this one, at what life stage, what quantities, what medical condition, what kind of a nutrition will be, right. Otherwise, if you go to Google, everything ends up being cancer. So, you and plus Google will have a lot of content from the developed countries, Indian climate, Indian breeds, Indian, the way of living, lifestyle is very different. And that is how, those adjustments need to be made. This is where, obviously this category is there is a, essential need that this category cannot be built alone with only products, alone with only services in the form of healthcare, or building a training or behavior company solving for pets. It will have to be an integrated solution of products and services, because the problems are interlinked, they are not isolated. Food is recommended by a vet. Food is not bought directly through a shelf or an Instagram ad. So all of this needs to be integrated. Coming to which categories or which species, how are they placed in India? So India is definitely a dog market. 85% of pets in India are dogs, 12% of them being cats, and around 3% or so is small animals and other animals. India is not able to even account for fish as pets, because we at times don't even treat them as pets. So US, on the other hand, and more evolved markets have a much less skewed balance between cats and dogs. Now again, I'll tell you, while cat is about 12%, cat is going to grow much faster than that of dogs. Simple reason: urbanization is happening. Pets are, households are becoming smaller. There is lesser space to keep a pet. There is also lesser time to take care of a pet. If a Gen Z is adopting a pet, that Gen Z is also going out to socialize on a weekend. That Gen Z also wants to, go out of the town for 2 days, as long as Saturday, Sunday comes in. Obviously, cats are relatively lesser maintenance, more easier to handle pets. They can stay, for small durations like 2 to 4 days, all by themselves as well. They don't overeat. If a food is given to them or kept in front of them for 5 days, they won't eat all of it at once. Whereas dogs are vacuum cleaners. They will just complete it and then obviously fall ill after that. So all these factors will definitely lead to a much larger cat growth, and that we are seeing as well. Mumbai households are small, there is lack of space, larger cat market than the average of the country. All those kind of things. Also, earlier there was a religious, or rather, a superstitial inhibition about cats as well. With Gen Z and all those things, पहले था बिल्ली रास्ता काट गई, हम रास्ता बदल देंगे. All of those things are obviously going away. Those superstitions are going away. Obviously, that is also leading to a smaller base, much higher growth. Audience which is adopting is also more prone to smaller pets and lesser maintenance pets, less, while the involvement in terms of love is the same. It's not that cats are loved lesser than what dogs are. Dogs are obviously much more needy when it comes to affection, but yeah, that's there. So this has been the category context as well. Still, the primary uh, constituent of the market remains to be nutrition. About almost 60 to 70% of the spend or consumption in the category happens on food. With growing humanization, the other categories in the form of non-food, wherein now we want our dogs to wear a cotton shirt when we are going out somewhere. There is this concepts of sherwanis and tuxedos for dogs and cats, and all those things have started coming. All that is obviously because of combination of uh, uh, available income, disposable income, humanization has happened, and now there are products also to fulfill that kind of I would still call it a secondary need. But yes, it has started to come in. So again, like cats grows faster than dogs, non-food or accessories and all those kind of things will grow faster than the food segment. Food segment will be defined by what is the consumption, by how many animals. But this is going to get defined by what is the rate of growth of penetration. Food everyone eats, every dog eats. There it will be only about packaged versus non-packaged. But here it will be first whether they are using that subcategory in the first place or not.
Vineet, just wanted to know, how do you think, I mean, the insights which you have on this industry and the analogies which you give, comparing it to real life situations, the theory of despair, how the category is going to grow. So, like, do you research a lot, read a lot, or this is just the thinking time you give yourself to understand how the market will grow or mature in the future?
Yes, Samyak, in this, I think it's the magic of the team together. So all three of us bring in we are very very different people. If I am a data analytics, very very detail oriented person, Aman is a very process efficiency, getting into minute things around how why would people be spending on this kind of a person. Varun has that creator kind of an angle to it. When all these three things come together, then obviously there is a lot more potential. Obviously, when we were thinking about this space itself, it was all about speaking to as many pet parents. Incidentally, all three of us being pet parents, a lot of these insights come naturally as well. I have been an in-out pet parent in my hometown, then did not have a pet in the middle, and then had another pet. In fact, this is also the evolution. When I was talking about guard dogs and shelter dogs, in tier 2 towns, if you're born and brought up, you're always around a pet. Then when you shift to an urban center, when you're just starting your job, settling down, studying, etc., that is the phase when you don't have a pet. And now again, once you've settled down, whether as a Gen Z or as a nuclear family, you again keep a pet. So that aspect, it was clearly seen in our lives as well. कि हमेशा से था, फिर बीच में नहीं था, and now there was the longing to get back to it, and so, and it actually is there as well. So all these insights come from one, personal experiences, and second, speaking to as many people. When we got to know, as I mentioned, I think one research which was pivotal to our offering was when we asked people who were not pet parents rather than asking people who were pet parents. And that was very, very important. So, you can definitely get to know about the industry by asking the users of the industry, but why people are not the users of that industry can only be told by non-users. So I think that flavor of, as I said, category creation, hai, you can't find enough insights alone from whatever the category is created. You will need to find out why it is not created till now and what is missing. And that is what is going to be the differentiator.
I think I remember Charlie Munger here because I read a lot about him. I'm into investing. So he always thinks about the invert thoughts, that what can go wrong rather than what will go well. So I think this is what you are trying to kind of say from people who don't want pets rather than who already have.
Yeah.
I think excellent analogy.
The same analogy which I said, that your past experiences don't teach you what to do, they teach you what not
Correct.
to.
Correct. Absolutely. So, just being privy of your time as well, Vineet, our last question always is to all guests, like, what are some books, blogs, or experiences via newsletters or talking to people which have had a lot of impact on you? Any recommendations on the book side or newsletter side, which have helped you grow as a thinker or helped you gauge a different kind of side on how to go about running startups and manage people, or even for hiring a team and building a team from scratch?
Samyak, I'm not a very sit down kind of a reader, but I'll tell you one book definitely that has made an impact is Never Lose a Customer Again. I think it's a very well known book. Our category has always been a repeat category. It's by nature, by design, a sticky repeat category. And I think we have read that book multiple times over again. While it is important for any business, even it is even more important for our business as well, because one customer is going to give the food to their pet every day, is going to take care of their pet whenever there is a problem in terms of healthcare, and there will be so many more occasions to spend non-discretion or rather discretionary as well. Those are all non-discretionary spends. Then there will be, so the power that acquisitions can bring is much lesser than the power that retention can bring in this category, right? So even if I were to acquire much lesser customers, but I build something which makes them stay with us, that is what the essence of this category is, and that is how we have thought about this category as well. Some of the learnings were true for a very similar category, for a very different category, but a similar nuance of repeat business in Licious as well. Everybody eats meat, almost every day or very, very frequently in a month. So those have been, that has been one book. Otherwise, I am a pickup from everywhere kind of a person. So I would just scroll through Twitter, I will just scroll through LinkedIn, try to see what people have written. And now there is this obviously growing trend of people talking about their experiences, trying to see what aspect of that experience fits in our context. Is there something to take away from there, even beyond academics? If it is some real application, we are at least we are those kind of people who not just go for, I'm not a sit down and read kind of person. I will rather pick up snippets, try to assimilate them, build it into a theory that is workable for my particular problems context, execute, experiment, fail fast, and then see where it goes.
Yeah, I think this is where the mental models come in. Pick it up from everyone, build a mental model, and try to execute it. I again love it. So I think I had a lot of fun because the way you think, the way you explain, I think really a lot of people have this ability to do. So thank you so much, Vineet, for taking out time today. Absolutely loved and learned a lot, especially in terms of building mental models, explaining an analogy and stuff. So yeah, and kudos to Supertails, and hope it becomes a a monopoly in this category. Thank you so much, Vineet.
Thanks, Samyak. Thanks, Samarth. Really had the entire last 18 to 24 months come in front of me while I was narrating this entire thing.
Yeah.
Super. It was really amazing speaking to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
Thank
much,
you so
Vineet.
much.
And we won't waste or spoil your Friday evening. So yeah, again, thank you so much, Vineet. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much. I think I
Yeah.
look forward. I think when once this is up, just let me know. I'd love to hear how it went.
For sure.
Absolutely.
We'll do
Absolutely.
that.
Thank you.
Great.
Have a good
Thanks,
weekend, Vineet.
thanks,
Bye.
Samyak.
Bye
Have a
bye.
great evening.
Bye.
Have a great weekend
Bye.
as well.